Emma. I was only 5 when night descended on my family. It was my birthday, but also the last day I would see my mother forever. She smiled at me that evening and said, "Happy birthday, my beautiful princess." Then she went on to remove a sparkling blue, moon-shaped diamond necklace from her neck and wore it on mine. And while she and Dad sat beside me and my cake with 5 tiny candles, singing and clapping, my mum suddenly stopped. Her face went from smiling face to serious. She furrowed her brows and stood up, going still as if she was trying to listen for something suspicious. It made my dad to get up too. The candles on my cake were still burning. Mum tiptoed to the door and peeped through the keyhole, then suddenly ran to where I sat and picked me into her arms, passing me over to my dad and frantically blowing out the cake's candles. Not to wish long life and prosperity, of course, but to make the room dark enough to keep us safe. We 3 all ran into the next room. "Elgin, listen to me," she spoke to my dad in a hoarse whisper. "Please stay with her, I beg you, and don't let her make a sound, please, please, Elgin." "No, Aileen," my dad grabbed my mum's hand. "Let me go. Please don't do this. Let me go instead." "It's me they want, Elgin. I'll never be able to live with myself if anything happens to you. I'm sorry," she said with watery eyes, and I started to cry. She bent to kiss my forehead, moved 3 steps back and waved her hand around me and my dad saying, "They wouldn't know you are here," and flashed out of the room in a way I had never seen before. I could feel drops of tears from my dad's eyes fall on my face as he covered my mouth firmly with his palms and held me so hard to his body I could barely breathe. Everything took place too quickly. Shortly after Mum left the room, I heard the sound of our main door crashing down, accompanied by hissings, grunts, and finally a piercing scream that shook the core of my house, causing the door of the room my father and I was in to be forced open, exposing the commotions going on in the sitting room before my very eyes. And the first thing I saw was my mother on her knees with a long iron spear pierced through her heart to emerge from her back. Someone stood above her, pushing the spear deeper and deeper, but I couldn't get his face because he was masked. A shriek erupted from my depths, but couldn't come out because my father's hands were placed over my mouth, gagging me and stifling the shrieks. My face was filled with his tears, and mine, as we both watched my mother die before us in horror, and there was absolutely nothing the both of us could do. My father couldn't even move his feet for reasons I still couldn't grasp. The masked man pulled out the spear forcefully from her chest as she grunted and fell on her back. Dark red blood gushed out like a fountain from her chest, mouth, and her nose before she closed her eyes. My dad rushed to close my eyes with his other hand, but it was too late. I had seen it all. The masked man with some other masked men went into other rooms as if they were searching for something, and even walked past me and my dad without noticing our presence. After searching and searching for some time without result, the masked men left our home, disappearing into the night, leaving me and my dad to sob feverishly. After that day, I was unable to say another word. The trauma of witnessing my mother's death rendered me mute. That night, my father buried my mother and took me far away from where had been my home, and we lived among people I knew weren't our kind. He locked me inside the house all the time, asked me over and over again to promise him I was never going to come out when he was not around, that which I did all the while growing up. He even taught me the sign language to make communication easier for me, since I couldn't speak but I could hear. But I had lots of questions, asked him every time I got the opportunity, but he always said he would tell me when the time was right. All I should just know is that men are bad. However, on the night of my 18th birthday, my wolf, Ashley, spoke up in my mind for the first time, and my father finally answered the questions I had been asking for years. He said him and my mother had a forbidden love, as the vampire realm and werewolf reals were sworn enemies and had nothing to do with each other. But he and my mum found out they were mates, and instead of to reject each other and break the bond according to the law of their realms, they went against the rules. My mum, who was a vampire, and my dad, a werewolf, fell in love instead and ran away from their realms to be together. This caused an uproar in their both realms, especially that of the vampires, as my mum was already betrothed to the vampire king even before she was born. She chose love instead and was willing to die than to go back to her realm and her family. But they didn't back down. The Vampire King, in his rage and jealousy, sent men to hunt down my mum and bring her back. And if she resisted, they should kill her. My heart broke as the image of my mum's last moments wafted through my mind. "They wanted to kill you as well, Emma," my dad said, caressing my hair as he sat beside me on my bed. "That is why your mother did what she did, because according to them, you aren't supposed to be born." "Why?" I signed, lifting my right hand above my left. "You're a mixed blood, Emma." He took my hands down and clasped them with his. "They say you're an abomination, but the truth is, they are scared of you, and they are still looking for you, which is why you should never go out, okay?" I simply nodded and asked him about his own realm. "Didn't they look for you as well?" I signed fluidly, my hands dancing on the air. "They didn't," he said, staring into space. "They just ostracized and announced that I was never part of the werewolf realm, including anyone who came from me." "So, I'm saved from the werewolf then?" I asked with a smile, trying to lighten the conversation. My father's forehead was creased in worry. He had aged so fast because of all he had to go through, raising a mute child up on his own and all. "I really don't know, child." His brow thickened. "Now that your wolf is out in the surface, it may be more complicated than I thought it would be. I honestly didn't think you would have a wolf since your mother and I weren't both werewolves." He kissed my forehead and gazed lovingly at me. "But not to worry. Dad would keep you safe. So you should never leave my side. People are a lot scarier than you can imagine," he concluded. Left my room and shut the door. I stared at the pile of books in the wooden shelf my dad made for me, books that had been my companion ever since we moved down here, and wished my dad had said more. I still had so much questions to ask him, so much I wanted to hear from him, like what my mother was really like, as we didn't have a photograph of her and I could barely remember her face. What it really meant to have a wolf, how the first shape-shifting felt like, and why does the colors of my eyes changed from the natural blue to red when I was mad and stayed normal when I wasn't. But I didn't want him to worry. He had enough on his plate and was doing so much to make sure I was okay. I knew it was wrong to hide the fact that my eyes changed colors from him, but I was also aware that it would make him worry more. According to Shakespeare, there were answers one had to find out for oneself. And that was exactly what I planned to do. "That's the spirit, Emma. My wolf," Ashley spoke up in my head as I drifted into a restless sleep filled with nightmares from the past. Every night for the past 18 years, I saw the death of my mother play out in my dreams. It was beyond traumatizing. I could hear the shattering sound, the piercing scream. I could see the thick red blood sauntering down her mouth and nostrils, the masked man, the spear, but could never see my mother's face or her beautiful amber eyes. And I always woke up, gasping for air, clutching my pillow wet from sweat and tears and weeping into the night till dawn came. "Emma." The next morning, my dad made a big breakfast before I emerged from my room. "Morning, Dad," I signed, then rubbed my eyes to accommodate the blinding sunlight coming from the window. "Hope you had a restful sleep, Emma," my dad asked, smiling. "Come eat. I made your favorite." I knew he did all that for my birthday, but I wished he hadn't. I had made it clear that I didn't ever want to celebrate my birthday or ever talk about it. It only brought back sad memories, memories I couldn't wipe off but hoped we would heal from. I signed a "thank you, but you shouldn't have bothered" to him with a beam on my face. Of course, I didn't want him feeling bad. He stood in our crammed kitchen, placing dishes on our little wooden dining table with just 2 chairs. Our house was a little built with woods and looked like it came out from the house drawings I made with colored pencils as a child. It was divided into 4 unequal parts. My room, Dad's room, the restroom, and our kitchen. My dad made my room the biggest, which was still small compared to my room back in our home with my mum. He always left home in the morning and returned by evening, sometimes coming back with books or edibles. He knew I loved to read. I sat down on the chair facing the many plates of delicious-looking meals he had to wake up early to make, and I felt a rush of gratitude towards him. "I know you don't like this, but today is a special day for you, Emma." he started, sitting down opposite me. What makes it different from my other birthdays? I asked him with my hands. Well, he studied the food before him thoughtfully. Your 18th birthday is not like others because you get to meet your wolf, even shapeshift if she is ready, manifest other powers that you may have, and you get to meet. He paused and started stuffing my plate with food. I get to meet what? I signed with impatience, knowing it was something really important for him to pause like that. You get to meet your real self. He spoke, concentrating too long on his plate and evading my eyes. I knew instantly that he was lying, but I didn't push. It was all part of his idea of keeping me safe. We both started to eat, aware of the tension simmering in space between us. I needed to clear the air, as I didn't want him to guess what I was planning. I dropped my fork noisily to attract his attention. Dad, you have a wolf, right? I signed with 2 raised eyebrows. Sure. He smiled, and I could sense the relief in his voice and his eyes. What's his name? Real, he said, chewing his food slowly. Real? As in real? I asked with a playful scowl. No, real as in R-E-E-L, he mouthed, chuckling silently. Dad, I read in some fantasy books that werewolves actually have ranks. How true is that? I probed, trying not to let the height of my curiosity obvious to my dad. He caught on very easily. It isn't just written in books, it is true. I'm a beta wolf. My father was, his father was as well, and so on, he explained with a sad grin. I nodded and continued forking pasta into my mouth. My dad finished his hurriedly, took his plates to the sink, put on his winter coat, and walked to where I sat, almost done with mine as well. I really wanted to stay with you today. Take a walk with you out of the house, but I can't. I'm so sorry, sweetheart. I have to work for us to be comfortable, you understand? He gazed down at me remorsefully, rubbing down my hair in a gentle manner. But I'll see you when I'm back by evening with more of your favorite books and snacks, okay? Now come close the door. He finished and walked to the door with me behind him to lock the door after he leaves. I was sure he would come back with more fantasy books in his leather bag. He locked the door outside himself till I turned 15. Then he allowed me to lock myself in after repeating 3 or more times that I would never come outside or open the door for anyone who wasn't him. I followed him to the door, and before he went out, he said, "Remember? Don't open for anyone that isn't you." I signed with a frustrated sigh. I get it, Dad. I can take care of myself, and I'll be fine. I know, Emma. Daddy loves you. He dropped a light kiss on my forehead, hesitated, while staring at me with cloudy eyes before leaving the house. I let out a breath of triumph and closed the door after him, putting the 9 bolts in their place. I had to wait for an hour after he left because sometimes he came back to get things he forgot, like his winter coat or muffler or grocery list. I couldn't risk letting him know I left the house, knowing how much of a fit he was going to throw if he found out. In a bid to kill time, I took care of the dish, folded my clothes, and did some of the minor chores in the house, and before I knew 1 hour had sped by. My heart was racing with excitement, wondering what I was going to see and people I could meet. To my surprise, I wasn't a tad scared despite all my father's warning. I was only a little worried that someone might recognize me, but that was close to impossible since we were in the human realm. I would just go out for a few hours, see the things happening around me, and how people behaved if those books were true or as fictitious as they were. My dad said they were. I said to Ashley, wondering if she was even listening. One thing I wanted badly was to make friends and, if possible, find someone my heart would beat for, just like in the books I read. Someone who would sweep me off my feet, I thought, giggling with glee. Do you have a destination in mind? Ashley suddenly spoke up in my head, making me stop in my track. She sounded even more excited than I did. Of course not, I scowled at her, even though we were still trying to get to know each other. I have no idea when I'm heading to, just moving randomly from place to place, while you take note of all the routes we pass so we don't get lost. Or do you have anywhere in mind? Yes, she squealed jumpily. Where? I snorted, narrowing my eyes. Well, I can't say the exact place, but I would know it when we'd get there. Now let's go. Her excitement made me feel more certain about what I was about to do. I mean, my own wolf would never put me in danger, right? I can hear you, she giggled into my ears. You have nothing to fear, Emma, I got you. she said, and I couldn't help but laugh at her half-baked reassuring words in my head. I went into my room, took my biggest winter jacket, some granola bars with a water can my dad bought for me last year. I wasn't big on food, but hunger could strike at any time, and when I was certain that I was prepared enough, I drew in a deep breath, opened the door, without my dad knocking, of course, and stepped out of the house for the first time in 13 years. I quickly came out and closed the door behind me before sense of reason and guilty conscience forces me back into the house. "Which direction, Ash?" I asked, standing in front of my door, looking from left to right. Ashley hopped mischievously and nodded towards a direction completely opposite from where there were other houses. The place my dad and I lived was meters away from where humans actually lived, so I couldn't really see much, but I could see moving people hear voices due to my heightened hearing and long vision. Ashley was pointing into the direction that led into the bush and trees, and I couldn't help but worry if I should really trust her. "I don't want to go and see trees and grasses, Ashley. I see them every day from my window. Damn it." I glared at her, feeling upset. "For Pete's sake, Emma." She rolled her eyes at me. "I thought you were interested in a real adventure. What do you want to say to humans anyway?" "Hi, my name is Emma. I'm one of the creatures you only read about in books, a she-wolf precisely. And they'll welcome you with open arms with your mutinous and socially crippled condition?" I felt a little hurt, but wasn't interested in pushing that with Ashley at the moment. "There's no time, Ashley." I stomped my foot on the ground angrily. Time was ticking, and my dad would soon be back. "Then trust me and follow my lead." "Fine," I grunted, and marched towards the direction she pointed at. I hated it when the females I possessed were trying to get their own orgasm while I was still hard and thrusting. It made them seem like they had a will of their own, but no female who caught my fancy should ever have a will of her own. It was clear that I was growing feral by the day, but who wouldn't without a mate? It wasn't my fault, but that of the moon goddess who had selfishly refused to give me a mate for over hundreds of years of my existence. I needed a Luna, a strong-willed one who might bring calm to my burning soul, but I didn't know if I would ever be that lucky. Females generally were weak and too easily subdued and manipulated, especially when one had power and authority. I had searched the whole werewolf realm, kidnapped little girls from their families, and summoned the old sorceress Gosh to tell me if any one of them would turn out to be my mate. None of that worked, as Gosh would always stare deep into the eyes of the shivering she-wolves, turn to me and say with her frail, disappointed voice, "She is not the one, Alpha," and then move closer to me. "When you meet her, you would not need me to tell you she's the one." I had no idea if it was out of pain or pleasure. Neither did I care. Black, my wolf, was running wild in my head. He loved the sex but wasn't comfortable with the females I was having them with. He only wanted our mate, the one who held the other part of our soul which was beginning to sink into nothingness. I stopped thinking I was capable of love anymore. The more reason I just needed to find her and make her mine, make her heal my soul and give me an heir. I wouldn't treat her wrong when I eventually found her, depending, of course, on how much she would submit to me. Submission, total submission. Submission to my will, submission to what I want for her, how I want her to look, things I want her to say, and things I want her to do. I can't help it, but I want absolute submission from any female who would be in my life. "Alpha?" The female under me muttered in a weak, exhausted voice. Suddenly recalling I had a meeting with other alphas from the 12 Forests pack that made up the werewolf realm. And more annoyed by the thought of sitting amongst those old alphas who liked to act like they had all the ancient wisdom pre-installed in them. After the demise of my father, the king of alphas, I moved the motion of introducing modern technology to our world to make our lives easier. But those old power-hungry hags kicked so adamantly against it, especially their cheerleader, Alpha Aggro, suddenly forgetting I was their new king and not the young, clueless, soon-to-be Alpha anymore. Now that the technology was in our world, these old imps seemed to be enjoying it the most, and shamelessly for that matter, overlooking the time they were so much against it. The issue almost caused a revolt. They took pictures with the smartphones, communicated on different social media platforms, and even formed private group chat where they could comfortably slander me, thinking I would never be aware. I scowled as I washed myself thoroughly under a hot shower, making sure to get the stink of the rankless she-wolf off me. I should get the stewards to change those sheets even though this wasn't my main room. I couldn't imagine fucking this low lives in my main bedroom. And they knew my rules. No hanging around me after sex. I always kicked them out. And if any of them started acting clingy like they were catching feelings or something, I just did away with that one straight away. A loud bang was heard from the main door. I already knew who it was. Curtis, my beta. He had most likely come to remind me of the meeting and must have gone to look for me at my office or main bedroom before coming here. He was well aware of what I did in this room and would always disapprove as usual, but would never dare tell me to my face. Or maybe not. He was always the kind, women respecter, and good wolf whom everyone loved. He never had countless sex ventures like me. He insisted on waiting for his mate. I could never be like him, though. Never, ever. Not even in a next life. I emerged from the bathroom with a white towel tied around my waist, while Curtis stood in front of the door, looking smart and set in low-cut green hair and suit. I hated the green hair, but it looked great on him, so I couldn't complain. Alpha, he bowed in greeting, clearing his throat loudly, staring at the rumpled sheets on the bed with disapproval as I went about getting some clothes on. All the 12 alphas are here already. They're waiting for you. Of course they would be here already, I said, slipping into my joggers and white polo shirt. They called the meeting themselves. What else should I expect? Curtis stifled a chuckle. He was the meek-hearted wolf, but he despised those alphas as well. Their hypocrisy and greed were just too glaring. I'll join them soon, Kurt. Let me go get some proper clothes in my room, I told him and strolled out of the sex-reeking room towards my main bedroom. The royal castle of the Red Forest, was a 5-floor Victorian building with modern technology now installed, giving it the appearance of an old, grand house with a new look. The castle was nestled beside a beach, and I could see the sea from the window of my bedroom on the 5th floor. The 5th floor was for me alone. My office, bedroom, recreational room, and sex room were all up here, while the other floors were for my foster sister Trisha and some of the castle's stewards and stewardesses. Kurt followed behind, and I went to my room and dressed up for the meeting. I passed the law of putting on suits for meeting. Our ancient royal dress code was a real hassle. I wasn't a fan of suits, as I would rather be in simpler outfit, but suit was better and more professional than the regalia and robe other alpha kings before myself wore. The throne room where I was to meet with the other alphas fell as silent as a graveyard immediately my beta announced my entrance. I strode in and sat on the throne as they all bowed their heads in greetings to me. I nodded at them and took my seat on the throne while they took theirs as well. The throne room was situated on the ground floor of the castle. It was the largest hall with glass windows and artistically sculptured chairs for the alphas, and a throne made by one of the most famous sculptors who made the throne with rare irons during the reign of the first Alpha King. Lights filled the hall as dusk was falling with the setting sun. One of my new amendment of the Pack's law was fixing every important meetings like this only during evenings. Meetings that included more than 2 wolves. So all alpha meetings were held around sunset. I had more important things to do during the day in my office, training grounds, and of course sex room. However, this meeting wasn't called by me but by the 12 alphas. I wondered what they wanted to talk about. Summoning meetings, even though they obviously hated coming to the castle. I wanted to get this over with as soon as possible, so I spoke up first as expected. The secretary in charge of taking the minutes sat by the far side of my right, next to Curtis. He opened the laptop ready to start typing. He was the youngest alpha here. Alpha Don, the one who is obviously more acquainted with tech devices and was more useful than those oldies sitting in front of me right now. So I'm sure most of us have other things to do today, so I suggest we get it over with as soon as possible. I spoke up first, making them aware that I wouldn't let them waste my time beforehand. Of what purpose is this meeting? I asked, raising an eyebrow at Alpha Agro, the group's spokesperson. Your Grace, Alpha Agro got up quickly and stood before me, bowing his head to speak. The reason for this meeting is the issue concerning your mating situation, and we as wolves under you have been deeply worried. He paused, standing more erect. I stifled a laugh. If one doesn't know how cunning and manipulative Alpha Agro is, they would believe him instantly with the way he was sounding like he really cared. Worried indeed. However, I decided to play along. I'm deeply touched by your genuine interest and worry about me, Agro, but I can assure you that I'm fine. I'm sure the moon goddess has her reasons. I retorted calmly and caught Curtis giggling silently from the side of my eyes. Oh, we're sure you are, Alpha, came his cordial reply. However, every one of us here understand the importance of a strong Luna by your side in running not only the pack, but the whole realm for that matter. It instantly became clear what they were driving at, but I had to ask anyway. Your words ring true, Agro, but what should I do since the goddess isn't answering on time? Well, Your Grace, he cleared his throat and turned to probably gather momentum from his fellow comrades. We might have a suggestion that we have given a long and hard thought. We believe it would work. So what could that be, if I may ask? I leaned forward, burning holes into him with my gaze. But Agro didn't answer me. Instead, one of his minions, Alpha Abel, stood up with zero confidence. We suggest you get a chosen mate, Alpha. He managed to cough out, sending the room to absolute silence. Curtis wasn't amused by the drama anymore. He was obviously shocked and suddenly itching to get up. I saw it coming anyway, so I wasn't. I continued my charade of asking questions whose answers I already knew. Relax, Kurt. I mind-linked my angry beta. As you all know, I have no current interest at the moment, or do you have any she-wolf in mind at the moment? I relaxed on my throne, a smile playing at the corner of my lips. After looking through all of the females in the realm, we came to a unilateral conclusion that Heather Strove, daughter of Alpha Agro Strove of the Green Forest Park. She is beautiful, strong, and smart. A great fit for you, Alpha. He said like an announcement, and my head shot up. So this is it, huh? You living bastard. I glared at Alpha Agro disbelievingly as he kept his head bowed like a real loyal subject. Do you agree to giving your daughter away to me as a chosen mate, Agro? I asked in a condensing tone. For the good of the realm, without question, he answered with a comported voice. Fine then, I shrugged, tired of the meeting already. Bring her to the castle tomorrow. The sorceress would conduct the ritual for us to be joined. So many reactions surfaced at my finalization. Kurt got up abruptly, his eyes almost bulging with anger and shock. You can't give up your faith on your mate, Alpha. He almost yelled at me through our mind link. Agro looked up at me, surprise written all over his face, and looked back down almost immediately. They all didn't expect me to agree so easily, so they could get a reason to turn the mind of the realm against me. I would take his daughter, and if I liked her, I would keep her. I was sick of the mate thing. Anyway, that would be all for today, I said and strode out of the throne room with then other alphas bowed and Kurt scrambling behind me. Emma. I had trudged far deeper into the forest than I expected, and I was honestly mad at Ashley and madder at myself for believing her. There were tall green trees all around me with dead leaves everywhere. An eerie silence permeated the whole place, except cries from crows once in a while. I wasn't just speculating, this was really a forest. What the hell, Ashley? I yelled at her in my mind, stopping in my tracks. Where the hell are we? I thought we agreed that we were going to see people and enjoy the first outing day of my life. Ashley wasn't sounding as enthusiastic as she was when we were leaving the house. I know, Em. I just feel like I have to be there, like something strange yet familiar keeps calling for me, she said in a meek voice I had never heard from her. That's too vague, Ash. You would have to be more specific if you want to convince me. Besides, this place isn't safe at all. We can't shift yet, and I don't even know what my powers are or how to use them, I complained. Look, let's just head back home. It'll soon be time for my dad to get back from work. I turned and was about to start making my way back from where we were coming from when Ashley stopped me with a pleading growl. We are almost there, Emma, she probed gently. I can feel it that we are close. Don't worry, we'll make it in time before your dad gets back, I promise. Pretty please? I must confess, she was really great at coaxing. The look of the please won't change my mind, you know? I muttered under my breath and then continued on the path she pointed at. She giggled and started jumping around on the walls of my head as soon as I agreed. The sun kept going down as I walked through dead crumbs of leaves that squealed under my feet. I marched through the forest till I got to a large clearing. As I took a step further, it felt as though I was sucked into something, and suddenly everywhere was bright like morning. I jumped in fright, absolutely bamboozled by what just happened. I turned back and tried to go back to the darker day, but nothing happened. I was stuck. And as I looked farther, some strange-looking men in all black uniforms like assassins from Naked Weapon were walking towards me menacingly in long strides. "Ashley, explain this situation right now," I yelled at her, bile rising in my throat as I twirled and took to my heels. "What the hell is happening? Who are these men?" I asked my wolf, my heart pounding hard in my chest, causing me to run faster. "I have no idea, Emma," she cried, sounding scared as well. I looked over my shoulders and was almost paralyzed with fear when I saw that the men had started chasing after me. Worse still, they were running faster. They got closer and closer to me, till they were just few meters from catching up to me. "Stop right now!" I heard one of them scream, and as if on cue, my legs tripped, and I fell face down on the sandy ground. "Ouch!" I heard Ashley murmur in head. I was about getting up to continue running even though I knew I had been caught, when I felt a strong arm on my shoulder hurling me up from the ground and making me kneel before them. "Who are you and how did you get here?" The one with the black hair asked with so much authority, I started trembling. I wish I had listened to my own mind and went back home, I thought, biting my lips. I had no idea how to reply them or what to say. I couldn't even speak. How do I tell them I was a mute person, and that I meant no threat whatsoever? They might not even know the sign language or even give me the chance to communicate with them through that. For all they know, I could talk but just didn't want to. Hot tears streaked down my face as I realized how much trouble I was in. The worst part was me being totally unable to defend myself. This was the exact reason my dad made sure I never left the house on my own, and look at how stupid I acted without a backup. "Ashley, do something," I shrieked at her, hoping for her to do something, anything at all that could get us out of this current mess, as the men stood like iron steel waiting for my answer. But Ashley went suddenly quiet. "Did you not get the question?" The other one with more muscular arms bellowed at me. "Who are you, and where did you come from?" They were getting more annoyed and irritated as I wasn't forthcoming with answers, but one of them was holding my hands behind my back so I couldn't make any gesture. Those hands clasped tightly together were my only means of communication, and these men had no idea whatsoever. I let my head slump as I stared at the ground, allowing the tears gathering in my eyes to fall freely. The other one who wasn't holding me raised my head up to face him with his hands, and at that instant, I felt a strange power surge through me. As the man looked into my eyes, he staggered back in with his face contorted in shock. The other one dropped my hands and took few steps away from me as well. These men just saw my eyes change color. I smirked in my mind at their cowardice. The strength in me was enough to take both of them. I had no idea how, but I just knew somehow. But in less than 10 seconds after that, over 20 men in that same uniform appeared from the other side of the clearing, carrying guns and ropes with them. "You better stay still, or we would shoot," the one who raised my head commanded from a safe distance. "And whatever creature you are, just know that a bullet from these guns would kill you at once. Tie her up," the other one ordered the men who have surrounded me by this time, and they stepped closer tentatively at first. But as they saw that I didn't move, they threw ropes around me, and soon I saw that I was tied with a strong blue rope that shone brighter as I struggled with it. There was something definitely in the rope, because as soon as they tied me with it, I began to feel strength seep away from me. I tried holding my head up, but my shoulders slumped lower instead. I'm really not a threat. I wanted to tell them so badly, but all I could do was weep till they dragged me from my knees, and one of them hurled me onto his shoulders like a light-weighted bag. They walked on till we got to a junction with a real road that led different directions. And before I knew, I was shoved into the back of a car, and a blindfold was put over my eyes, causing everywhere to go dark, but I could feel two men by my side, one at my left and the other by right. The car I was shoved into started to move with frightening speed. The car windows were not close, so heavy gust of wind slapped at my face as the car kept zooming on. It took over 30 minutes, if my calculations were right, before the car stopped and I was hurled out from the seat back to someone's shoulder again. I could hear waves from the sea, and it felt like I was imagining it because, well, I couldn't see a thing. Soon the person carrying me entered a place that was quieter, as I could no longer hear the sound of waves. He started walking more carefully, as if he was coming down from a flight of stairs. He walked for some few minutes till I heard the sound of iron gates clanging open, and I was dropped on the bare floor like a heap of sand. The blindfold was removed from my eyes and instantly took in the environment with itching eyes. I rubbed my eyes frantically to make sure I wasn't seeing things. I was in a cage, with the light entering so dim, it looked like it was under the ground. This looked like bigger trouble. I couldn't even reach my dad in any way, as I left my phone back at home. I could imagine how worried he would be reaching home and not finding me. The gate was closed noisily and locked with a huge chain and padlock, and I was left on my own in this semi-dark and scary place. The footsteps of the men echoed as they walked out of the place. Soon, the whole place fell silent, and I realized it was just me here. So much for an 18th birthday, I thought, as I sat on the floor, wrapping my hands around my knees, and once again the tears started to flow. It felt as though trouble was always waiting for me. Coming out of my house for the first day of my life, and this was where it landed me. My heart shredded into tiny pieces as I thought of what would become of me. Why can't I ever be accepted? And this was why my father tried so hard to keep me locked in for over a decade, so I had no interaction with anyone besides him. I guess he knew what he was doing after all. I began to sob quietly, but the sound of my own sob bounced back at me along with the loud footsteps, and the sweet, strong smell of freshly cut grass wafted into my nostrils. Alpha Z Wyke. By the power vested in me by the moon goddess, I now pronounce you mates. Sorceress Gosh pronounced, standing hunched before me and my new chosen mate, Heather Strove, in the throne room hall. Morning sun filtered into the window panes as I and my new mate stood side by side ready to take an oath of a lifetime. Kurt was fuming in rage some meters away from my right. Heather's father, Alpha Agro, had a disgusting grin at the corner of his lip from where he stood few meters from my left. And all the other alphas watched me in awe, taking the mate they chose for me just a day after they made the suggestion. And my new chosen mate was all beams and smiles in her heavily made-up face. She took her time getting ready. Maybe she actually thought that I gave a fuck about appearances. We'll have to see her true personality eventually. I wondered for a moment if she knew what she was doing or why she agreed to this, because she was literally throwing away any opportunity of ever finding her mate ever again. They actually called her smart, so I guess she must have weighed the advantages of her decision. What is there to lose in marrying the Alpha King and becoming the Luna Queen of the 12 forests of the werewolf realm? Mostly nothing. You may now mark yourselves to complete the process. The old sorceress continued before stepping back to give us space. We both turned to face each other, but her head was bowed, so I raised it up with my hand. Her dress was sleeveless, making it all the more easier. As I placed my canine on the crook of her neck to mark and take a few drops of her blood as the tradition demands, I suddenly heard the apprehensive voice of Kurt in my head. "Alpha, we have a situation." Kurt's urgent voice rang out, forcing me to stop what I was about to do. A female whose eyes had different color shades was seen lurking around our borders. She has been caught, and they are taking her to the dungeon under the castle. What? I let go of the confused she-wolf completely and turned to face Kurt. Why should I care, Curtis? As you have said, the royal guards have it under control. She might be a rogue wolf for all we know. The sorceress and everyone in the room besides Kurt was staring at me in confusion, but Kurt continued his mind-linking anyway. They said she doesn't only have the feel of a werewolf, but also that of a vampire. A vampire in our realm? How the hell did a filthy leech get in here? Black, my wolf growled in fury. It's just a speculation, as they are not yet sure, but they said they feel that way. Kurt continued calmly this time around. What? I yelled out, and before they could ask me what the problem is, I spoke up. We have a situation that needs my immediate attention, so I'll have to put a hold on this mating ritual, I announced, curtly, and the whole room hushed. Sorceress, I need you to come with me. I finalized and strode out of the throne room with Curtis and the sorceress quietly walking behind me. As I came out of the castle, I met about 10 patrol guards in the all-black uniform waiting beside a car. They all bowed their heads immediately they saw me, standing attention. Speak, I demanded, and the one who seemed to be their leader stepped forward. He bowed again before making his report. Your Grace, he started, while I and my men were keeping watch over our borders, we caught the sight of a female, and as she saw us, she started to run, and we began to... Tell me what really happened, Sergeant. I cut him off, getting bored of his storytelling. Her eyes... He gasped at the words as if he still couldn't get over the experience. At first, she had the feeling of a werewolf, but when we raised her head up, every part of her pupils turned red, glowing red, so we assumed she must be a vampire or some weird creature. Where is she? I asked, almost rolling my eyes at his overreaction. She is in the dungeon, Your Grace, he replied, pointing down, the farthest end. All right, you can go back to your post. You all have done well, I said, dismissing them. They all scrambled into the car and drove off. Let's go in. I nodded towards Kurt and the sorceress, but Kurt held my hand in an indication to stop me. What? I asked him, feeling irritated at his sudden reluctance. She might be really dangerous, Alpha, he muttered, his forehead creased with worried lines. The patrol guards didn't have to go. They could just follow us in since we have no idea what it is we are dealing with. She sounds really sinister from their explanation. I'm the Alpha King, Curtis, I stated simply, and walked through the door that led into the underground or basement as humans called it. But we built ours bigger, making it a place where prisoners such as rogues or lawbreakers are kept, with top-notch security made of modern technologies like the alarm system, shocker, and of course, royal guards at the entrance. I ambled slowly into the large hall with empty cages to my right and left side. Our realm was a peaceful one, so we rarely had prisoners these days. As I walked deeper into the dungeon as the patrol guards directed, my nose caught the sweetest and intoxicating scent that swooned my wolf and I, stirring a desire I couldn't name from the deepest part of my core. Red velvet and lemon. The smell got stronger as I neared the last cell of the dungeon, enveloping me in its coziness. Black, my wolf howled with glee and started pacing restlessly around my head as the shocking revelation dawned on us. Mine! Black and I chorused in unison in my mind as I began to walk purposefully towards the scent till I got to the last cell. I turned to stare at the owner of the smell, and our eyes met and locked, causing my heartbeat to accelerate, beating 10 times faster than normal. She had the bluest eyes I had ever seen. They were as clear as the blue sky on a sunny day, engulfing every part of my senses like the blue waves outside my window. Her dark hair stopped at her shoulders, enhancing the roundness of her face. A strand of hair dyed purple and threaded through with colorful beads that reached below her shoulder blades. She is our mate. This fragile female is my mate. She didn't look one bit like a threat. Plus, I could feel her wolf too, though not as strong as I expected. She gasped, suddenly peeling her eyes away from mine and retreating into the cell with her arms folded around her knees. I heard another gasp beside me, and I turned to see the sorceress staring wide-eyed at the female. I had no idea she was beside me as I was completely taken by the frightened female in the cage. Sorceress. Gosh turned to me with her mouth agape and her eyes almost falling from their sockets. How is this possible? Her voice faltered as she staggered backward. She's a half-blood, the first ever hybrid. Her face contorted in a way I had never seen before. She's my mate. We both spoke up at the same time and then stared at each other, trying to digest another round of shock. What do you mean she's a half-blood, Gosh? I grabbed the sorceress by the arm, hoping she was wrong. I can feel her wolf. She's a werewolf, I growled desperately. She's half vampire, half werewolf, Your Grace. The sorceress finally seemed to catch her voice. What? Kurt almost shrieked behind her, and I could feel my chest rumble as Black started growling with pure fury. And, she said, peering at the female blue-eyed half-blood, she's also a mute. Another blow, but I couldn't take it in. What do you mean she's a mute? I asked, my blood boiling over 100 degrees Celsius. She does not have the ability to speak, my lord. Gosh bowed and took 2 steps backward, avoiding my gaze because she knew more than anyone how I would be feeling at this point. The rational side of me kicked in eventually. She can never be my mate. I let out a hoarse whisper. A female with the blood of those leeches running through her veins, and also a mute, can never be my Luna Queen. I cannot bear that much shame. I spat and walked out of the dungeon without giving her another glance. Before we got to the entrance that led out of the dungeon, I turned to face Gosh and Curtis, who were quietly walking behind me. This must be kept a secret between us. I do not ever want to hear it anywhere else, I warned with clenched teeth. Yes, Alpha, they both bowed. And as for the mating ceremony, inform the Alphas that it has been cancelled. I've seen enough for today, I told Kurt, whose mind still haven't adjusted after all he heard. I took the elevator from the ground floor straight to my room, cursing the goddess for heaping such nemesis on me. The mate I had waited for all my life turned out to be a mute, and a half-blood, Emma. I was scared at first, but a smell that came with a protective aura enveloped me. I had always known that being a werewolf gave me a heightened sense of smell, but I had never perceived one so persistent and concentrated that it came with a feeling of intoxication. The smell of bleeding, freshly cut grass with an interesting masculine scent, I couldn't help but draw a lungful of it. As the loud footsteps drew closer, so did the smell. Ashley, my wolf, who was howling and wailing in my head, suddenly started jumping about in euphoria as the owner of the footsteps came into view. Holly Molly. I couldn't help but retreat at first, because I wasn't sure I had ever met a man this huge and imposing. His presence alone screamed dominance, and as I looked up at him, our eyes locked, and I could instantly tell he was having this magnetic feeling as well. Mate! Ashley exclaimed breathlessly. What? Mate? I couldn't believe my ears. I had finally found my mate, as in the person who held the other part of my soul, as my dad said my mum was to him. And he stood there gazing deep into my eyes with the deepest violet eyes. He looked so tall, I was sure I wouldn't be past his chest level. His jet-black hair sleeked back made him look dashing in his all-black, intricately tailored tux. Like he literally walked out of one of those romance stories I had been reading all my life. Or better still, one of those models' magazines my dad brought home once in a month. I heard a loud gasp from someone standing close to him, which dragged me out of my daze, so I turned to see an old woman with white hair all over her head, with a hunched back gaping at me with wide eyes. She took 2 steps back and tried to say something, and soon she and my new mate started talking so fast I couldn't get a thing they were both talking about. But I realized whatever it is they were talking about was making my mate extremely enraged. She told him I was a half-blood. She told him I was a mute. I had no idea how she knew all that, but it made the new male character in my life lose his cool. Amidst the commotion my presence was obviously causing, I noticed another guy standing behind both of them. He was good-looking as well in his green hair, but wasn't as tall as my new mate. He seemed shocked like the rest of them. And then I heard the words that pierced through my skin like 1,000 needles. "She can never be my mate," he proclaimed in a whisper that was louder than a trumpet in my ears. "A female with the blood of those leeches running through her veins and also a mute can never be my Luna Queen. I cannot bear that much shame." He was the alpha, and this place I was in was the werewolf realm, my father's realm. The same people who ostracized my father because he chose to stick with his mate, despite the fact that she was from the enemy's realm. And then it dawned on me that he was rejecting me. He didn't even wait to see who I was, but was already rejecting me. I knew I had limitations, but I had never been called a shame. Tears rushed down my eyes afresh as I watched my so-called mate walk away without giving me even a second glance. My heart sank like it was drowning. My insides burned. I wanted so bad to run away from everything. I wished so bad that all these was only a dream. No, a nightmare. that I only had to wake up from and find myself back in my home with my dad, the only person who loved and accepted me in this world. Silent and wrenching sobs from my throbbing throat echoed in the hall as I thought of how worried my father would be now, and what would become of me next. Would they kill me because I was a hybrid like the old woman said? Was it that much of a taboo? I asked myself over and over again, wanting answers, but knowing I couldn't get it at this point. The blue rope keeps drawing strength from me, and Ashley was hurting probably far more than me, as she was more sensitive to the mate thing than I was. I lay my head on my knees and drifted into a restless sleep. Alpha's like. I tossed and turned on my bed, trying but failing to get the blue-eyed half-blood out of my mind. According to the sorceress, I have to reject her and let her go, but how I could when she is the only antidote to my worsening feral soul. Still, though, I could never make her my Luna. That would bring unimaginable chaos to the realm I have been working hard to keep together. I shouldn't have left her there, at least. What should I have done anyway? She couldn't even talk. What the hell was I going to do with a mute? How would I know why she was here anyway? Still, she's our mate, and I felt her wolf. Black argued in his usually headstrong manner. The possessiveness caused by the mate pull was eating at him already, but I had to maintain rationality. After all, he's the wolf, and I the man. Have some heart, Zyke, he probed, almost growling. She's all alone there in that dungeon. Like I needed a reminder. Fine, I snorted out loud, throwing the quilts aside and getting up. I took out one of the torches from my drawer, threw on a sweater, and took the elevators to the ground floor of the castle. It was almost midnight, so everywhere was as still and serene as a cemetery, except the clashing waves from the sea that came with strong wind. An ordinary wolf would shiver in cold, though, but not me. The security guards in charge of the dungeon were dozing off on the counter placed beside the entrance when I got there. So I cleared my throat loudly, causing them to wake up so abruptly they almost jump out of their skins. Take me to the prisoner, I ordered in my alpha voice, a voice that made every wolf in my realm obey any word that comes with it. Which of them, Your Grace? One of the security men asked, cowering in fear. Are you asking me that? Sorry, Your Grace. This way, he bowed, opening the door gates the shaky hands. His colleagues stood aside with their heads almost touching their necks. Follow me, I said to him as soon as he opened the gates. I strode into the dungeon with the guard moving tentatively behind me, holding a shining torch. The half-blood female was probably sleeping with her head resting on her knees when we got to her cell, but raised her head up as the torch was pointed into the cage. Her eyes were what I noticed first. They looked swollen and puffy from too much crying, and I was certain she would be feeling really weak from that blue rope tied all over her. Truth be told, I wasn't even expecting her to still be conscious. That rope was capable of seeping out all the strength to any supernatural creature. Well, she wasn't just any supernatural creature, she was a hybrid. Certainly, the first ever to exist. I swallowed, understanding that what I was about to do was extremely dangerous and unnecessary. She could be really a threat to this realm, as Sorceress Gosh claimed, and unfortunately her claims were never wrong. But I also know that I would never have peace if I just let her be here all by herself. Open the cage, I instructed the waiting guard. Untie her, I said after he opened the gate. I was sure he heard of the rumors of the likelihood of her being a vampire, because he was visibly trembling as he stood as far as possible cutting off the blue rope from her with a penknife he took out from the boot in his right leg. You may go, I said to the guard, who almost passed out with relief as he tore out of the place, muttering, Thank you, Your Grace, repeatedly. Come out, I ordered, looking down at her fragile form as she crawled out from the cage, one tiny step at a time. At least she can hear, I breathed in relief, even though it doesn't change anything. Again, how could someone as weak as this be my mate, for goddess' sake? This realm needs a strong Luna, not some fragile-looking mute hybrid. Black growled at my thoughts. He thinks it is too insulting, but I was just being realistic and facing the situation. She stumbled out, staggering forward while I walked a few meters behind her. She was barely able to carry herself in her big winter coat and dirty clothes. Black wanted to take over so he could help or carry her, but I stopped him. We can't make her think we give a fuck, damn it! She was a female we had to reject to keep our pack in check, I told Black. How about our sanity, huh? Was his comeback, and I just decided to ignore him because he was right. Rejecting her could make us lose our sanity, but then we didn't have much of a choice. She trudged slowly past the security men as they watched her in awe and gazed at me in shock. This would be the talk of the pack tomorrow, and would definitely get to the ears of those slimy alphas. I'll cross that bridge when that time came, I thought. First, I had to know what brought female with vampire blood into my realm, even though I didn't have an idea how to bring out the words from her. I stared at her from behind, feeling the pull. As much as I didn't want to admit it, I was craving her small, frail frame. That's it, an idea struck me. I can never make her my Luna, but at least I can make her my mistress. Emma, he came back for me. Despite his cold, aloof attitude and distant eyes, he did really come back for me. I know I shouldn't be too happy yet, and his coming back for me doesn't mean he was going to accept me in any way, but I couldn't help feeling relieved. I would have had to spend the night alone in that cold, dark cell without food or blankies for the whole night. Even Ashley was finally getting better. The blue rope had drained almost all of her energy. After ordering a trembling man to open the gate and cut the ropes from me, he walked slowly behind me as I staggered along like a wasted alcoholic. We came out from the whole dungeon environment. Despite the darkness, I could see how breathtaking the whole place was. I was standing before what could literally be called a castle. It had 6 floors on the first wing and 4 floors on the back. There was light everywhere, giving it the look of a lighthouse by the sea, and it was actually next to an ocean. Wow. I was right after all. The waves were stronger and noisier by this time of the night, and it was much colder. I shivered as the wind prickled through my skin, forgetting he was right behind me because he cleared his throat, indicating that I should keep moving. He strode into my front, seeing that I was confused as to how to get in. We took an elevator made of glass so you could see everything outside. My mate, or better still the alpha, didn't make a single sound all through, while making sure the distance between us was as wide as possible. But despite how numb I was feeling, his smell was still able to envelop my senses. The elevator led to a large hallway with few doors, one of which he opened for me and asked me to go in. Someone would come and attend to you, he uttered icily and strode away till he disappeared into a door at the other far end of the hallway. My heart fell as I watched his broad back retreat away from me. Why was I feeling disappointed when I was expecting nothing? I didn't even know him yet, or what he was really like. Or maybe I do, and I just wanted to excuse the first impression he gave off. I have always thought that whenever I finally come out into the world, I would excuse people's first impressions because no one is perfect. Not humans or supernatural creatures. No one. I entered the room, which was completely dark, but 5 times larger than my room back home. I had no problem seeing in the dark, as my sense of sight is much more heightened than that of humans or even werewolves. Werewolves' sense of sight and smell are more heightened whenever they shift to their wolf form. However, for me, I could see, smell, and hear far clearer and sharper without shifting better than even an alpha wolf. A family-sized 4-poster bed stood in the middle of the room, suddenly reminding me how exhausted I was feeling. I sat down tentatively, waiting for the someone to come and attend to me. According to the alpha, I didn't even know his name yet, nor did he know mine. Not that he cared anyway, I thought, letting my bored mind wander. The door opened, and a middle-aged, dark-haired woman with a clumsy smile on her face came inside. She clapped twice, and all the lights in the room suddenly came on. She held a bag in one hand as she rushed to where I sat and started muttering apologies to me for delaying. I simply nodded and forced myself to smile at her to show I wasn't mad at all. Who was I to be mad at anyone in this place anyway? She probably won't be this courteous if she knew what I really was. She showed me to the bathroom, which was immaculately squeaky clean, gesturing and demonstrating effusively with her hands even when it wasn't necessary. I guess he must have told her the person she would be attending to was a mute. But I wanted to tell her the only problem I had was speaking, not hearing. It would save her a whole lot of stress. But I guess it's true what my dad had always said about what people think when they meet people who can't speak. They assume you can't hear as well. Like speaking impairment came hand in hand with hearing impairment. Well, to be fair, it does most times. I took a really hot bath that instantly made me feel better and threw on the clothes she brought me. It was a blue sweater and black joggers. Blue was my favorite color. I wondered if she knew that. But of course she won't. It was just a random coincidence, like the kind I was in right now. Then she brought me food that looked carefully prepared, seafood. I gobbled it all down in a few minutes, and she told me to get some sleep by gesturing towards the bed. The bed's softness welcomed me into the only comfort this place has offered me, a good night rest. My dreams were consumed by the penetrating, deep violet eyes, gazing down with me with a look totally void of emotions, making it more of a nightmare than a dream. I woke up the next morning feeling more relaxed and well-rested. Someone was standing over by bed watching me sleep, but turned away when I opened my eyes. It turned out to be no other person than my mate. His hair wasn't sleeked back like yesterday. Instead, it fell on his face in a really appealing way. He was putting on gym wear like he was about to go for training, or maybe he just got back, either of which I had no idea. I scrambled out of the bed as fast as I could, wishing I could at least say good morning. I stifled a yawn and tried to stay as far from him as possible. Despite wanting to be close to him, his presence filled me with fear and trepidation. He strode menacingly to where I stood, his face filled with contempt, while he radiated a really strong air of dominance. I couldn't help but bow my head so I could stop seeing his face. "Can you really hear?" he asked in his deep, intimidating voice, looking down at me while standing about 2 inches away from me, so close I could hear the sound of his heartbeat. I nodded without raising my head up, staring instead at the restrained elegance of the tiles designs on the floor. I wasn't much of an aesthetic, but I know pretty things. "So how do you communicate with people then?" he asked again. I heard a tiny trace of interest in his voice, so I took a few steps backwards, raised my head to stare at him, and began to sign. I cupped my right fingers into a fist and raised my pinky finger straight as an indication for I, then raised 4 of my fingers and tapped them repeatedly on my cheek to indicate talk. Then folded my both hands to form a fist and smacked them gently together to indicate with, and finally pointed my index fingers to themselves to show sign or sign language. "I talk with sign language," was what I was trying to tell him. He stood still, staring at me stoically, and when I finally dropped my hands, he raised an eyebrow inquisitively at me. "Can you write words down?" he asked, rubbing his temple as though he was sick of me. I nodded, not bothering to sign anymore. He obviously wasn't interested. "So if you're asked a question, you can answer with written words then?" He advanced slowly towards me with a clouded look in his eyes, darker shades of violet. I nodded again, walking backwards while he kept walking forward with an evil grin at the corner of his lips. "All right then," he smirked. "We have a lot to talk about, little mate." But I couldn't move back anymore when I realized my back was touching the walls close to the window, and just like that he was upon me, leaning down so our lips could almost touch. However, I couldn't cower anymore as it dawned on me that I wanted this too. I wanted him to kiss me, even though he was obviously toying with me without uttering any word. A stray tear dropped from my eyes, streaming down my cheeks. Why the hell am I tearing up at this point? I cringed at myself. In a calculated movement, he raised his thumb and brushed the single tear from my cheeks, sending tiny tingles all over my nerves. His nearness felt intoxicating, and all I wanted to do was wrap my arms around his neck and glue my body to his rigid abs. Ashley stirred as I gazed into his eyes, and felt all my nerves active at that moment. I knew he felt it as well. Our connection was undeniable. He withdrew his hands suddenly as though my body was made of fire, stood erect, and walked back to where he stood initially. Then he spoke into something in his hand, saying, "Come in." And immediately, the door gave way, and 3 new faces walked into the room, with the woman from last night, making them 4. They were 3 women and 1 man, all middle age, putting on squeaky clean white shirt and carefully ironed black trousers. They were all standing at attention with their heads bowed and their face stone serious, except the woman from last night who looked like she was born with a smile on her face. "Give her a pen and paper," he said with a curt and commanding tone. And one of the serious-faced women came forwards and handed me a beautiful jotter designed with purple color and a black ball pen. "Now write out your name," he spoke to me without looking at my direction. I opened the first page of the jotter and wrote EMMA, then raised the jotter up to show whoever wanted to see. He read the words without squinting, even though he was standing afar off. "Good," he uttered, and then turned to face the people waiting on him. "Her name is Emma," he started, pronouncing my name with a deep, rich English accent that made my toes curl. "And I'm introducing her to you because she would be staying in this room as you are the only wolves allowed to work in this floor. Also, you will not say a word about this to anyone. Is that clear? Live here?" He's got to be joking, I scoffed mentally. "Yes, Alpha," they all chorused, bowing deeper. "You may leave, except Stewardess Roth." And they all bowed again, turned, and walked out of the room in robotic unison, like toy soldiers. The person he called Stewardess Roth was the same female who came to me last night and took care of me. I liked her already, and wondered what he wanted to tell her. He didn't say a word to her, but corked his head as though he was thinking deeply. After a minute, she spoke out loud. "Yes, Alpha Zyke," bowed to him and left. Curiosity ate at me. I wanted to know what they spoke about like that without even talking out loud, and I knew asking him would be a waste of time because he would never tell me. But at least I knew his name now. Zyke, Alpha Zyke. As soon as the woman left, he turned to me. "You are never to leave this room. Whatever you need would be brought to you here. Clothes, food, whatever way you use to entertain yourself. All must be done in this room," he said with tone of finality, and was about to leave when I ran to stand in front of him, showing him the words I penned down after he talked about me living here. "I want to leave. My father is waiting for me back home. I don't mean any danger here, and I'm obviously not needed here, so please let me leave. Instead of hiding me here like a disease." He finished reading and hit the paper off my hands, glaring daggers at me. "You can't leave here, little mate," he muttered, coming too close to me and towering over me. "I cannot make you my Luna, but I can make you my mistress." Alpha Zyke's hoarse voice pulled my numb mind alert as I squirmed under his heavy gaze. He flipped me around with his hands on my shoulders and his body touching mine. Every part of his body was strong and hard. I had never seen a man like this in my whole life. His ripped abs bulging from his arms were hard, his broad and squared shoulders hard as well. It was a strange feeling repulsed by someone and wanting the person at the same time. His presence alone made all my senses alive. I wrapped my arms around my body tightly, simultaneously terrified and curious of what he might do to me. "From now on, female, you only do what I say." Third-person point of view. Alpha Zyke left the new room he assigned to the half-blood female angrier than he came. How dare she think of leaving? He fumed as he marched to his office. He knew he wasn't supposed to be pissed, but he couldn't help it. She wasn't meant to be here in the first place, but she came with her legs and allowed him set his eyes on her, infiltrated and consumed his dreams at night, made his morning restless. He felt as though if he didn't go see her this morning, he was going to lose his mind. She was making him lose control already, but he wouldn't let her. He probably wasn't in his right senses when he took her out of the dungeon and called Stewardess Roth to go attend to her. He would never let her see how much effect she had on him. After all, she was only a passing weed he should have uprooted when he first saw her. He would just have to hide her as much as possible. The mate bond is indeed a curse, especially to him. Worse still, Black, his wolf, was beginning to connect to her wolf deeper than desired. He almost kissed her, finding it extremely difficult to resist her bright blue eyes with the single strand of hair, dyed purple and threaded with colorful beads in her ebony dark shoulder blades. Zeke strode back to his room, too riled up to go for his daily routine training. He saw Curtis come out of his office down the hallway, obviously looking for him. He already knew what Curtis wanted to tell him. "Alpha." Curtis bowed, breathing hard like he had been running for a while. "I have been looking everywhere for you, Alpha. Was about coming to your other room." He nodded, looking over my shoulder to the room now occupied by the half-blood. I'm here now, Curtis. The half-blood female. He started and suddenly realized he was supposed to bring his voice down. She is not in the dungeon anymore, and when I asked the guards, I was told you came to take her out in the middle of the night. He whispered discreetly with his eyes darting around the hallway to see if anyone was there. He fell silent, waiting for an explanation from the Alpha or something, but he stood staring at Curtis without saying a word. Yes, Curtis, Alpha Zyke said, finally breaking the silence. That information is correct. Is that why you are searching for me, as if I was kidnapped? Kurt gazed at Zyke aghast, as though the Alpha had suddenly lost his mind. She's dangerous, Alpha. We don't know the extent of her power or how much havoc she is capable of wreaking on us. Deep lines creased his forehead. We are not having this discussion here, Beta. What else do you have to say to me? Zeke asked with a stricter tone, causing Kurt to heave a deep sigh. The Alphas are asking if the mating ritual would continue, he said. They have summoned the sorceress already and are waiting for you at the throne room. Isn't it a bit too early for that? Zyke asked rhetorically, raking his hands through his hair. Argos's daughter, is she there as well? Yes, Alpha. Alpha Zek turned and started walking towards the elevator to the throne room. He was trying to think of a way out of continuing the mating ritual. As much as she looked like a good fit for the Luna position, she wasn't his type in any way. More still, he hated her father, and last, and also the least, he had found his mate now, even though he wished he didn't her, as she was something he could never show to the world as his mate. He entered the throne room to see about 5 Alphas, the sorceress and Alpha Argo's daughter, dressed like she was going for a beauty pageant with an animated smile plastered on her heavily made-up face. He could never picture her in his special room. They all bowed as soon he sat on the throne and waved at them to sit. Then a thought and perfect means to wriggle out of the forced mate thing hit him. He definitely couldn't just tell them he wasn't interested anymore. As an Alpha, he had to stick to his word, so he believed this method he just thought of would work just fine. He nodded at Argo, who was obviously itching on his seat to speak. Alpha. He bowed in reference, standing before the throne. We heard some strange creature was seen in our border yesterday. Thankfully, our guards were able to apprehend it, and that was why the mating ritual was suspended. That is correct, Argo, Zyke replied with an expressionless face. We are all very much concerned, as it sounds like a threat to our realm. We just want to know if things are under control now. Argo continued, and all the other Alphas behind him nodded in agreement to his cunning words. He must have known about the half-blood through one of those oafish guards. A threat to our realm? Alpha Zeke had to suppress a sneer. These cunning wolves always tried to overstress issues to bring out a reaction from him. A reaction they could use against him. Well, thank you for your concern, Alphas. Zeke smiled down at them. Everything is perfectly under control. And about the mating ritual, I'm afraid I realized we rushed into it too early. I believe we would need more time to know each other. We thought about that as well, Alpha. One of the other Alphas, Atlas, spoke up, standing on his feet. That was why we wanted to suggest to you that you let Heather live here in the castle, so that the closer proximity can help you to know each other quicker. Or is there any reason you wouldn't want that, Your Grace? He asked, suggestively, without raising his face up. It was obvious that these Alphas actually held their own meeting before coming to him, Zyke thought, gritting his teeth in irritation, and Argo was obviously their cheerleader. However, the suggestion wasn't bad at all. If Heather agreed to his terms and pleasured him the way he wants, he could consider keeping her as his Luna. If not, he would do away with her. She would stay at the 5th floor and would come to him whenever he needed her. He couldn't risk anyone finding out about the half-blood living inside the castle. All right, then. He agreed, to their utter disbelief. She can move in tomorrow and we'll both come to a conclusion after 3 months. Then I will let the realm know if I'm taking her as my Luna or not, he concluded, noticing the sorceress burning her gaze into him. She knew what he did already, and she was totally not happy about it. They both would have to talk about it, but definitely not today. There was too much on his mind. And that female with an interesting eye was at the center of everything. Emma. Meet Carla, your personal maid." Stewardess Roth announced, gesturing to a cheerful-looking young female with chestnut brown hair and green eyes. "Carla, meet Emma." She was most probably around my age, but stood few inches above me. "She knows sign language." Roth continues, "So she would be in charge of everything concerning you, including your feeding, clothing, whatever you need. If there's anything she cannot get for you, let her know and I'll sort it out. You are not to leave this room for anything. Carla would be your hands, leg, and mouthpiece." She finished, bowed slightly, turned, and left the room, closing the door behind her. I sighed, realizing I was still a prisoner here. The only difference between this room and the dungeon was the comfort and absence of the blue rope. If not, I was still very much caged. Carla, my new personal maid, started to sign as soon as the stewardess closed the door, but I raised my hands at her and signed, "I can hear, you can talk," to her. She dropped her hands and started with her mouth. "Wow, I love your hair," she almost screamed with ecstasy. "The way you made thread and bead thing. How did you do it? You're so beautiful. Oh, forgive my manners, I should introduce myself properly." She came closer and stretched her hand to me. "Hi, my name is Carla." She beamed widely, and I wondered what was so good about being a personal maid. "I'm your new personal maid, and I'm so happy about it, because, firstly, as a rankless wolf, I've been working in the lowest floor of the castle, and I've never dreamt of ever coming to the 6th floor like ever. I never knew that knowing how to sign was going to pay off one day." She paused to catch her breath, her eyes glistening as she spoke. "Also, I won't be cleaning the floors and scrubbing the toilets anymore now that I'm working as your personal maid, because I have to be with you all the time, keep an eye on your every movements." She trailed off and darted her eyes around. I stared at her, noticing a change in her demeanor and a dim in her eyes. It's a habit signers has, watching others intently, alert to every facial altercation, every change of body position, all of which carried meaning. I realized I couldn't trust her after that. I sat on the long sofa in the room and gestured for her to sit. I wanted to know more about her, even though I couldn't trust her. I found her fascinating. "How did you know how to sign?" I signed, facing her. "Muteness is obviously not a common thing here." "Well, that is very true." She signed back slowly, still avoiding eye contact. "My granny was mute all her life, so I had to learn the sign language to be able to communicate with her." She looked down on her lap sadly, as if she was reminded of something that made her unhappy. "Where's she, your granny?" "She's died a long time ago," she said out loud with a calmer voice. "Oh, I'm so sorry." I signed with a condolence gesture, genuinely sorry for her loss. In sign language, there was a difference between saying "I'm sorry" to someone you wronged and saying sorry to someone who lost a loved one or is in pains. It is totally different gestures, though the same words. We both fell silent after that. I knew she had so much more to say and ask, but she had blew the chance, and I would never trust her. It was clear that she was here simply because of what she stood to gain, and to also monitor me. But why? What was so special about me anyway? I had to leave to escape from here today. I have had enough of this madness, and my father would be worried sick, literally. I needed to distract her, make her leave here so I could think of a plan. The day was getting darker, and it was the best time to act, if at all I was going to succeed. "How old are you?" I signed with fake cheerfulness. "You look really young, like my age." "Oh, I'm 17, her eyes lit up again. "And would be 18 in 6-month time when I can finally find my mate. How about you?" "I'm 18, I replied. "Would you be passing the night here?" "Sure," she spoke aloud. "I was told to never leave your side, so I was wondering if we could be friends since we are almost age mates." "Sure. Wow, for real? You're 18 means you would have found your mate now," she said with deep curiosity etched in her voice. Why was she that curious anyway? I wondered as I didn't bother to answer her question. An idea came into my head. "Is there a library here in this castle?" I asked. "I love to read, and I'm beginning to get bored sitting here and doing nothing." "For real?" Her cheerful mood was totally back. "I prefer movies, though. What kind of books do you read?" "The library is at the north wing of the castle. I would dash out and go get it for you." "Great," I thought triumphantly. That was the response I needed. "Emma." I took out my new diary and wrote, "I love anything from Sidney Sheldon R.L. Stein, James Hadley Chase, Marion Keyes, H.C.H. Ritz, and for fantasy, Cassandra Clare and T.R. Durant. "Oh, goddess," she exclaimed with amazement. "You really love reading," she giggled. "Yes, I do," I signed calmly, trying not to show my impatience. I needed her to be on her way already. "Do they all write the same genres?" she asked, still looking dazed. "No, not at all," I stifled a laugh. "Sidney Sheldon writes crime thrillers, while R.L. Stein is one of the best horror story writers. Then James Hadley Chase writes thrillers as well, with a touch of romance. Marion Keyes is a women fiction or chick lit writer, while H.C.H. Ritz is badass with sci-fi, science fiction, and I already told you the fantasy writers," I explained before dropping my hands. "Woo," she gasped, placing her hands on her mouth in delight. "Your face literally changes when you start talking about books. But I'm more of the movie type, though. Movie or erotica novels, heh." She laughed, and to my horror, it seemed she had completely forgot going to get the books for me. "Carla, do you think the library in the castle would have those books?" I strategically reminded her. "Of course," she beamed proudly. "I've had the opportunity to go into the library once and, take it from me, it's the largest I or anyone have ever been to. So many, many books, you'll get lost." As if I had ever been to any libraries before. But this one piqued my interest. I would have really loved to go there someday and see for myself, but I guess that day would never come as I would be leaving this realm tonight. "I'll be glad if you could get some from me. Doesn't have to be all of them," I told her, and then handed the piece of paper with the list of writers I tore out from the jotter. "Sure," she took it from me and got up abruptly. "I'll try to get as much as I can. It's getting late. Besides, I need to get blankets to sleep and some clothes. I came here in a hurry without those." She smiled and swept out of the room in her rough black trousers. I nodded at her with a wide grin. "Take your time, friend." As soon as she left, I went to work immediately. I drew out the pink quilts and white bed sheets from the bed, tied both ends, and dragged it to the slide window. I dragged it open, peered down, and discovered I won't be landing on a safe side, as some guards were visibly below chatting and laughing. Coming down there would make my situation a whole lot worse, aside from the fact that I could fall down hundreds of feet below and lose all my limbs. I had to change plans ASAP before that chatterbox comes back, I thought. I stared at the 2 slide windows in the room for some seconds before an idea struck me. I wrapped the joined bedsheet and quilt around my body and opened the other window, which was few meters away from where the chattering guards were keeping watch. From what I saw, the windows had strong iron railing built above them, so if I could crawl to the far end of the wall without being seen, I'll release the rope, tie another part on the railing with one hand, and then slid down slowly. Phew, sounds easy, even though I knew it was purely a suicide mission. But I don't think I'm scared of dying anyway. I'll rather die a free person than live a caged life, I concluded to myself. I inhaled deeply, went to close the main door so Chatterbox would have a harder time coming inside to give me more time. I clapped twice, and the light in the room went off to make my movements less conspicuous, and then I went to the window to begin the most dangerous risk I had ever taken in my life. Second most dangerous. Leaving my house was unmatchable in terms of dangerous things. With the sheets securely wrapped around me, I snuck out of the window and placed my right leg on the railing carefully, and when I felt that the railing was strong enough to carry my weight, I added my left leg. I tried as much as I could to move noiselessly till I was in the next window. The window didn't belong to the room I was locked in, but to a totally different room. Thankfully, a dark brown thick cotton curtain fell over the window, protecting me from being seen by anyone in the room. Phew. I let myself breathe for a minute before continuing my monkey business. My hands clung tightly to the railing while I moved steadily towards the next window. I got to the next window, and it was unexpectedly open. I tightened my sweaty palms on the railings and hid at the side. I wanted to get a view of what, and most importantly, Wei Cho was inside, so I stretched out my head carefully and peeped into the room. At first I was startled by the redness of every part of the room, but then realized that it was probably because of the lighting. Why was this particular room so red? I wondered, curiosity eating at me. I tried to peer closer, twisting my body so I could only steal glances from the room with my head. But luck ran away from me at that point as one of my hands slipped from the railing. I gasped in both fear and shock, so I clutched the window like my life depended on it. It really did. I stifled a scream and started panting louder, trying to catch my breath. My both legs were down already. I could barely hold my whole weight with just one sweaty and slippery hand. My heart was beating so loudly, I could hear it in my ears. "Help," I moaned in my mind, scared out of my wits. Before I knew it, a firm hand grabbed onto my free hand and hurled me with so much speed and force, I was pulled into the red room and ended up falling on a rigid body. I was lying on an unknown person with the firm stone, hard frame, still trying to catch my breath. I raised my head up and my eyes met with the deep violet eyes of no other person than my mate. My thumping heart literally stopped for a moment. Our gazes locked, and time sped by slower than ever. Third-person point of view. After leaving the other alphas and every other person back at the throne room, Alpha Zyke went straight to his office. It wasn't even noon yet, and today was becoming more bothersome as hours ticked by, he thought, walking into his office to take care of some pack issues. The next time he raised his head from the piles and piles of documents he had to sort out, it was evening already. He got up, flexed his muscles, and strode to his room, throwing off his clothes and going to take a shower. After the shower, he put on only his joggers without shirt and sauntered into his red room, which was like a secret room inside his royal suit. The room where he found real pleasure. A pleasure only 1 in 100 females in the realm could give to him. BDSM. Normal regular sex could never equate to this. That was why he had promised himself to make Heather his Luna if she could do scenes with him. But he doubted it. Heather looked like a weapon Argo is trying to use against him. Anyway, he had to try, look for something, for someone, anyone, as he was slowly losing his mind. But he didn't just do it with anyone. Most she-wolves aside, the rankless ones are strong-willed wolves. Well, it would be fun watching those will break in pieces, but he didn't have that time. Someone with extremely submissive traits was what he needed now. No one knew about this side of him. No one. Curtis is guessing, but isn't entirely sure. Trisha, his foster sister, doesn't. No one does. The room smelled of dust and trapped heat, so he opened the windows and curtains for air to come in. This was the 6th floor in the castle. No one could really see or hear what was going on in the room, as he created the walls to be soundproof and the lighting red. It added to the enigmatic vibe of the room. Alpha Zyke. As I walked around the room dusting silver cuffs, my collection of whips, a weird sound caught my ear. I stopped what I was doing to listen more carefully and realized it was coming from the side of the window. And it wasn't just any kind of noise. It was the sound of panting, breathlessness, and I could sense anxiety from whomever it was because it was close to me already. I ducked to the side to hide from plain sight as it was too late to shut the window without being seen. Soon the panting increasing, and then a noise from the railings. A slim hand suddenly drops from nowhere and started dangling in front of the window, dawning on me that the person beside that window needed my help. I don't know why I felt that way, but it felt natural. Instinctively, I held on to the dangling hand and pulled the person in with forceful speed because one wrong movement, and we'll have a body dead from shattered bones today. The impact sent me sprawling on the tiled floor with my back and with the light-weighted person crashing on my body along with me. I drew a long breath to be able to steady my breathing quicker, but a strong familiar smell wafted into my nose. My skin tingled in a way it haven't before, and all of my senses came alive. Slowly, I raised my head to look at the person lying on my body to be sure I wasn't imagining things. It looked like a female, and she was panting hard, and she had an ebony dark hair. She lifted her head, and as our eyes met, trapping me in her sea blue gaze. Yeah, my senses were right. It was her, my half-blood mate, Emma. After literally throwing me off his body when the realization that I was the one finally hit him, he stood up and went to shut the window before coming to face me. Escape plan ruined. "What the hell are you doing, half-blood?" He growled at me menacingly. I was getting used to it already. "Were you trying to escape?" He continues with an elevated eyebrow. I shook my head vehemently. If I could speak, I would have told him I was going to the library. But what was this red room for anyway? I wondered, turning around to feed my eyes. A 4-poster bed with pillars stood at the middle of the room. Different kind of whips were arranged in a glass closet glued to the wall. Long belts, restraining handcuffs police used to arrest criminals, were lined in another section of the closet. The room smelled of leather, wood, and dust. I had no idea what some of the things in the room were called, so I simply stared in awe. And of course, the huge presence of my mate in the room was too much to ignore. I really wanted to know what all these things were for, and why he was here. Does he own them? Or were they some kind of things used for ritual in the werewolf kingdom? Alpha Zyke snapped his fingers, dragging me out of my daze. He was standing close to me, so close his delicious smell made my head swoon. I wanted him so badly, despite how infuriating I found him, and I knew he wanted me too. And he was fighting our attraction because of what I was, who I was. Those romance novels I've been reading all my life weren't as complicated as this. The male and female meets, fall in love, fight for their love, and then lives happily ever after. Here my male is fighting what he's feeling instead of fighting whatever is standing against us. Maybe my life was always destined to be complicated. He strolled around the room confidently, looking thoughtful and sexy without a shirt, while his jogger stopped below his 6-pack sexy belly. Ashley humped around, telling me that she could feel his wolf too. Then why was he acting like a stranger to me? If he had made any attempt at accepting me, even in the tiniest bit way, maybe I wouldn't be thinking about running away. You know, you would have been dead by now if I wasn't here. His deep, animalistic voice drew me out of my thoughts. Was that concern I hear in his voice? "Don't you ever try this again," he growled from behind me. "Do you hear me?" I nodded feverishly, feeling scared and aroused at his dominating attitude. "You became mine from the moment you crossed that border," he continued, looking like he had suddenly lost his mind. "You're mine, half-blood. Let that sink in." "I'm not yours. I wanted to say so badly." "You can't own by keeping me locked up in a room and bring in people to keep an eye on me like I was your prisoner or something. You can't own me by hiding me like a disease. You have no idea what I want to do to you," he whispered this time around and turned me to face him. I gasped as I gazed into his glowing eyes, so dark, his violet pupils had almost turned black. They were saying words of need and want, words his mouth weren't saying. He grabbed my both hands tighter and held me flush to him, dipped his head to reach mine, and took my mouth into his. My breath caught in my throat as butterflies resurrected from my abdomen, flapping furiously in my stomach. His lips felt so soft and appealing, they claimed not only my lips but my soul as well. My knees weakened, and it felt like all the bones in my body had turned to jelly. I wanted to feel my hands on his skin, but couldn't because his hands were tightly curled around my arms. And the deeper the kiss went, the tighter he held me in. I moaned weakly as his tongue worked its way expertly inside my mouth, wanting more. I knew I couldn't fight this. It was as though my heart and body was all his since the very day our eyes locked. But he stopped all of a sudden, dropped my arms and looked away from me, raking his hands through his hair. Confusion struck me first, and then embarrassment. He was toying with me again. I felt unwanted. I mean, if the only person who is supposed to want you more than anyone in the world doesn't want you, just how worthless can that mean you are? "Go!" He growled, his back still turned against me. "Leave here, right now!" A tear streamed down my eyes as I walked out of an open door which led me to a bigger room. This one had no red lights and strange accessories and didn't smell of dust and woods. The room looked brighter and smelled of him. But it all made me feel nauseated as I dashed out of the place, to my room, my prison. I wanted him. What was so bad about me that he wouldn't want me, I thought, quickening my steps, almost not noticing or minding when I bumped into someone on my way out. Alpha Zyke. I was slowly losing my mind, I thought, pacing around the red room restlessly. As much as I tried staying farther from her, she somehow found her way back to me, causing me to let go of my resolve, just like what happened a few minutes ago. I held her in my arms and didn't want to let her go. I had to fight so hard to detangle from her. Though she was trying to escape and almost killed herself in the process, Why should I be so concerned, so scared that she might get hurt? Succumbing to this self-sabotaging feeling, this curse called mate bond was going to be the end of me and my hold of the realm. My father ostracized any werewolf who dared have any affair with a vampire, other alphas before my father killed even. How could I, the king of all alphas, claim someone with a vampire blood with open arms? If revealed, my subjects are going to cause an uproar. Those power-hungry alphas would use it as a weapon against me to take the throne away from me, my lineage, and I would never let that happen. But I couldn't let her go either. My soul craved her. My wolf was connecting deeper to her as days went by. If she leaves, I could go mad and Black would go completely feral. I'm tired, Black, I said to my wolf. I'm playing a dangerous game that wouldn't end well with whatever side I chose at the end of the day. Black ignored me and continued howling. Ashley. He grunted silently. Who was Ashley? Wait, was that her wolf? Her wolf had a name and was that close? How is that even possible? A half-werewolf isn't supposed to have a wolf as the legends wrote. I only thought I and Black could feel her wolf because he was her mate and her wolf was buried deep within her. I stormed out of room, coming to a decision that would help me get rid of the feeling I had for her. If I could get sick of her, then the mate bond wouldn't be that effective, right? I would make her my submissive. And then she would be nothing more than a scene mate. All these attachments and emotional roller coaster would drain off from me. Someone banged on my door, so I quickly closed the door to the secret room and let down the curtain concealing it and making it look like there was nothing there. I threw on a shirt and opened the door. Of course, it was the only person in the whole realm who would have the audacity to bang on my door. Trisha. She breezed into my room in her usual sunny manner, sat on the couch and curled her legs in. She was the last person I wanted to see at this moment. What do you want, Trisha? I asked weakly, suddenly feeling exhausted from all the emotional roller coaster. It's Trish, she rolled her eyes at me. Well, I came to see my brother since the 6th floor and 5th floor are now as far as Red Pack and Green Pack. It's Red Forest Pack and Green Forest Pack. Trisha, and that doesn't explain why you are here, though. I scolded gently, even though I was glad I could see her anyway. Trisha was abandoned at our doorstep as a baby, so my parents adopted her and made her part of the royal family. She was inconsolable when my mother, the Luna Queen, died some years back. I have come to love her fiercely as the only family I have in the world, even though she could be a pain in the neck sometimes. I've missed you, she sneered. Looking up from her phone, is that not enough reason to want to come seek for my big brother? I missed her too, truth be told, but a lot has been going on, so I haven't been able to meet her or go see her. Besides, she was just a floor from me. Cut it out, Trisha, I said, striding towards the door. I need to run. Been a while I let Black out. Oh, she snorted, still sitting comfortably on the sofa. Talking about running, a female bumped into me on my way here, but continued running without acting like she bumped into someone. I couldn't even see her face, just her hair. I think it was black. She said offhandedly at first, but then started smirking crossly at me. My muscles tensed at Trisha's words. What was I thinking when I asked her to leave like that? I was so caught up in my emotions that I forgot she might be seen coming out from my room. I could never let Trisha know about her. Wait a sec. She got up and walked to where I stood. You did something to her, right? And who was she anyway? I thought you'll stop bringing in random females now that you're about to be married off. I swallowed, trying to seem as natural as possible. She's no one, Trisha, I chorused, feeling my blood rise. She's no one and nothing you should concern yourself with. And I'm not about to be married off. Well, if she isn't, why do you look so tensed up? She walked around me with her hands on her lower jaw. Now my curiosity have been piqued, brother. Who is she really? No one, I repeated between clenched teeth before marching out of the room. She caught me. Trisha knew me more than anyone else in the world, so she would know that something was up. But I would never allow her get involved in this. It was my cross. I would carry it alone. I left the room to escape discussing further about her. I headed down to the forest behind the castle. Shape shifted into black and started racing like crazy through dead leaves and shrubs with the unsettling waves of the sea, roaring loudly like my troubled heart. She's no one. She's no one. I kept on repeating in my head like a life-saving mantra.